Welcome back to another episode of the Cameras and Coffee podcast. I am sitting here with Renee Delot, and she is from Moxie Bright Events, and we're going to talk about resetting and refreshing your 2024. So, welcome, Renee.
Well, thanks for having me, Kara. I have my coffee
Yes,
in my
I'm
Disney
actually
princess mug.
drinking chai today.
Oh, you know what? I tried a chai for the first time like last week when my husband and I
Really?
were visiting his family in New Jersey, and I liked it. I didn't think I was going to like it. It was kind of a mistake order, and I was like, well, I'll try it.
Oh,
It was
so
good.
I have to do the chai latte. I don't like straight up
Yeah,
chai.
yeah.
I'm not
Oh,
a
it
tea
was chai
drinker.
latte. It was a chai latte,
Okay.
100%. I ordered a vanilla latte. Somehow they made me a chai latte. I was like,
Ah.
"Meh?" But then I tried it, and it was good.
Ooh, nice.
I mean, I'm
I
back to
love
a
it.
vanilla latte with collagen in it this morning, but
That's
it was
good.
fine for that
I
moment.
can't wait to talk more about setting habits in our day as we go
Mm,
on
yes.
and kind of talk about that too. So that'll be good. But before we get started, let's talk about you. Let's tell the listeners about yourself.
Ooh, wow, that's a lot. It's a long story, you guys. I'm going to bullet point it for you. So as you said, I'm Renee Dallow. I'm a planner in Los Angeles. I was not always a wedding planner. Obviously, none of us were born wedding planners. How funny would that be? Right out of the womb, just like with a clipboard, like, hello, I'm ready. I was an actor for a really long time, and I did musical theater, and I was born and raised in New York City. So it was very much like available to me as a career path, right? It wasn't like I had to travel to some distant city. It was like right there. Um, but like all good actors, eventually you have to decide, what kind of lifestyle you want. And the lifestyle of an actor, can be quite chaotic. Like I was on the road for many years, living out of a suitcase. And although I
Mhm.
love travel and I still love travel, that's a great way to spend your 20s. But as you're approaching your 30s, you're like, is that really what I want to do?
Mhm.
And for some people, it is. And for me, it sort of lost its luster. So I was the friend in every friend group who would plan the parties. And then once all of my varying income actor friends started getting married, I was the one who planned their weddings. Now,
Mm.
for some of these folks, I was planning their weddings as a favor, as a gift, uh, sometimes for trade. Like I had one, I'm using air quotes, client who worked at Crate and Barrel who was like, I could get you a couch. And I was like, I would take a couch. So like I was doing like unhinged sort of business again with the air quotes.
Mhm.
It wasn't a business. It was this hobby that I kind of did on the side of all the other things I was doing. And one thing led to another, and like over time those people that I had helped with their weddings were referring me to their friends who I didn't know to help them plan the weddings. And I thought, okay, I think this is actually something. Now this was like early 2000s, right? Like, so this wasn't a time where we had podcasts
Mm.
like this. We did not have online courses on how to be a wedding planner. In fact, there really wasn't a lot of like online businesses like
No Pinterest.
well, I'm dating myself. But like I remember going to an early interview for a wedding planning, and they were like, well, bring your portfolio. And I showed up with like this, like it was teal and it was like a leatherette cover and it had like photos that I had put in there, some weddings I'd done. And like that was how I got a job. And, I didn't know what other way to do this, right?
Mhm.
So I was sort of doing it as a hobby for a million years. Let's just fast forward to like, I meet my husband. We decide to get married. We live in LA, but we decide to get married in Philadelphia, which is
Mm.
where he's from. And my family, like I said, is from New York City. So it worked for everyone. It was like a centrally located place that wasn't across the country. And I hired a wedding planner because I knew that I didn't know Philadelphia. I didn't know those vendors.
Mm.
I knew what I wanted for my own event deeply, but like, who was going to help me make that happen? So I hired a wedding planner in Philly named Erin. Shout out to Erin, who at our wrap up call after the wedding said, I don't know why you're not a wedding planner. You didn't really even need me. Like, I almost feel guilty taking your money, but not really. And, like you should do this. And honestly, Kara, it was, sometimes it's like the simplest thing that sort of
Mhm.
gives you permission to like step into a new version of yourself or like a new part of your life. And
Yeah.
it was just her saying like, why aren't you? And I was like, I don't know. Because Mindy Weiss lives in LA and she's like, oh honey, no one can really afford like 1% of the people can afford mini Weiss.
Yeah.
And it really got me thinking that like maybe I could make something of this. Um, and then I found an online educator named Allison Howard, who was she's not in business anymore, but she was one of the first wedding planners to like put their education on YouTube for free.
Mm.
So I literally YouTube searched how to be a wedding planner, and Allison's videos came up, and I was like, oh, I like her. And then like, sure enough, a couple weeks after I found her on YouTube, she was like, I'm launching an in-person wedding planning workshop in San Diego. And I was like, I think I need to do this. So I said to my husband, I think I'm going to go to San Diego and do this wedding planning workshop. And he's like, okay. Like that was it. It wasn't like a big drama. Like, how are we going to afford it? How are you going to get there? He was just like, yeah, okay. That sounds right.
Mhm.
And then I did the workshop with Allison. And again, it was the simplest of things. She said to me, when are you going to launch your wedding planning website? And I was like, and this was like February. And I said, oh, well, it's going to take me a while to put it together because I don't really have a budget to hire anyone. So, like, I don't know, maybe by like September. And she was like, no, you're going to work on it on the train ride home and you're going to launch it like next month. And I was like, I don't think I can do that. And she's like, no, you can. And you're going to. This is no, you're not waiting till September. And and again, I was like, okay. Like I was just like, I guess I will. And then the end of this long story is that I did launch my website April 1st and I coordinated my first wedding April 7th.
Wow.
I know. And when
Did
I
you
tell
book them from your website or was it
yes and no. So I had made
okay?
friends with a couple of wedding planners who were like in LA who were more like a
Mm.
mentors to me. One in particular, Liz Cooper Smith, shout out to Liz, who actually named my business. And was
Aw.
helping me along the way. So she got an inquiry from a couple that was like, look, we don't have very much money. We're getting married on Sunday. We're freaking out. We need help. We don't have anybody. Can you do it? And she's like, well, I certainly can't, because she'd been in business 10 years at that point. She's like, but my friend Renee is not doing anything. And so I met them at a Starbucks. Uh,
Don't we all?
right. I met them at a Starbucks. They paid me $600 to coordinate their wedding. And then it was just like I was, it's kind of off to the races then.
Oh man. Well, and I love how you go back to saying like you hired your own wedding planner, but I think that's like even when we can do it all, because I was the do it all bride. I had the binder, I had everything
Yeah.
like down to the minute. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is they joked and made fun of me. But I was like, you know what? I'm doing this so that you don't have to ask me a question. You can just go to that thing.
Yep.
But I think it's good in the sense too, like hiring a coordinator so that you don't have to stress and think about all that on your wedding day either.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
like
I had done it enough
mentally,
to know, right? I had
yeah,
done it enough to know that like I didn't actually want to do it for myself.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's key is like even in the sense like put that on someone else. Don't try and do it all yourself. So that's so good.
100%. Now,
Yeah.
see, all these years later, so that was 12 years ago when that story I told you was 12 years ago. And so now, I've been an industry educator since 2018. I've been a podcaster since 2019, public speaker that same time. So it's like because I sort of found my way in this industry when the education piece was in its infancy. Like I feel so strongly about like giving back, making sure
Mhm.
this new generation of wedding pros is educated, because I didn't have a background in
Mhm.
business when I started, right? Like I have a BFA in acting, right? Like there's no part of my background that'd be like, you should be an online entrepreneur and have run multiple businesses. Like, no, no, no. No. But I think we learn so much by doing, but then
Mhm.
also we can, without knowing it, get into some really bad habits that are kind of
Mm.
difficult to break.
No, I agree. It's interesting because I was sitting down with a friend the other day and she was in tears. And she's like, I'm just going to quit. I'm going to quit.
Mm.
Like, or I'm going to take this on. Cause she's like, I quit my photography or I quit my full time job so I could pursue this. And it's not working out for me. I'm making less money. I'm just drained. And I said, but is this a season or is this forever? And I'm like, you just need to step back and take a moment to realize, like, and are these growing pains? So like what do you need to change
Right.
for the future?
Right.
And so I think helping her be that voice of reason in that struggle and in that overwhelm is huge, because there are, like, if you're passionate enough for it, it's going to keep you going.
Yeah.
But if you constantly are being shut down and you just don't have those things that just keep pushing you back and saying like that, like that, wedding coordinators, like, why aren't you doing this? Like,
Yeah.
I've had opportunities where you just need someone like outside of your family or your close
Yes.
circle to just
Yes.
point it out,
Yeah.
so you can be like, oh, okay, maybe. Like, my kids are
Yeah.
the same way. I could say something and they're gonna like be like, whatever, mom. And then
Yeah.
someone else
Someone else
says
says
it
it.
and they'll be
Yep.
like, oh.
Yeah, I mean that listen, that's just our bias. Like that's our inherent bias.
Yeah.
The people that are closest to us, sometimes we're like, you don't know. Um, but what's also, I think, for your friend who was so upset, it's like I also always say to folks, like, but what is success though, really? Right? Because
Mhm.
if you listen to everyone on the internet, it's like, you need a 7-figure year. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe you do, but also maybe the success is that you have more freedom in your life to go to Target on a Tuesday afternoon. Like,
Yeah.
I still get kind of like deliciously like giddy if I'm doing something I'm not supposed to, like a couple of
Mhm.
weeks, like quote unquote supposed to. Like last week, on Thursday afternoon, I think it was a Thursday, I took myself to the movies to see, there was like this limited run of Waitress, this musical that was on Broadway that I love. And I knew no one
Mhm.
wanted to go with me. And I knew I needed to like go see it that one weekend. So I just bought myself a ticket. And at noon, I said to my husband, like, hey, I'm going out. And I sat in the almost empty movie theater by myself, still 12 years later, going like, it's fun that I'm here.
Isn't
Because
that
like,
crazy?
it's
Like, us
crazy.
as women, where we just feel guilty for
Oh, girl, I did not feel
like
guilty. I felt it was delicious. I was like, look at
I
this
love.
life that I've designed. I can run around to the movies. And I mean, listen, did I make up the time? Sure. At some point
Yeah.
I had to answer some emails that came in while I was at the movies, but
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, I was like, this is
Yeah.
lovely. I also don't have kids, so I think I'm removed from a little bit of that like guilt. Like my husband, this is like such an aside, but my husband Joe and I, like literally yesterday, were like, should we go to Vegas on Sunday? Should we just drive to Vegas? And we're like, I mean, we could. I would have to move like maybe 2 phone calls, but like we could. And he's like, we should go to I'm like, yeah, let's go to like, we just decided that maybe
Yeah.
we should do that. Like that's, there's this little cartoon that I have printed out of my office. It's called Lady No Kids. And she's just like walking around with like a bathing suit and a top hat. And there's like a geese, and she's looking at this married couple with kids, and she goes, yeah, I'm just gonna follow this geese around for a minute and like see where I end up. And the underneath it says Lady No Kids, and I'm like, that's me. We're just gonna see what happens.
I
No, but
love it.
again, the idea of like, what's your definition of success? And then like,
Mhm.
what is making us what is making us so unhappy in entrepreneurship, right? Is it
Mhm.
lack of business? Is it looking at the person next to us who we think we should be doing as well as? Is it the FOMO of Instagram? Is it that we haven't had like a decent like glass of water or a break in a while? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Have we not worked out in a month? Like, what is really happening?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are all great things because they're so true. And I think because our busiest season here in the Midwest is that time when fall hits all
Yep.
the way to like the beginning of December. And it
Yeah.
is one of those moments where you just feel like you can't dig yourself out of a hole.
Oh, for
And
sure.
so all those thoughts of wanting to quit come into play because you have all that overwhelm.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's so true.
Well, and especially for photographers, because you have such a, it's interesting, right? You and I almost have opposite workflows, in that I do all of my work before the wedding day, and then the
Mhm.
end of my work is the wedding day. The beginning of your work is, there's a little before, but right, the wedding day is
Yeah.
so strenuous and adrenaline fueled and physical for you,
Yeah.
and then you still
Yeah.
have to edit, and then you have to
Mhm.
deliver. Like, I give it up
Yep.
to y'all, because like by the end of a wedding, even if I love my couples, and I love 99.9% of my couples, at the end of the night, when I say goodbye to them, there's a part of my body that goes, okay, because like
Yep.
you can like release that adrenaline at that point.
Mhm. No,
Yeah.
I totally understand. And especially like when you're looking at the end of a wedding, you're like, okay, do I have stuff scheduled for later? Like,
Yeah.
not only are you trying to finish this, you're trying to find more people, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's an ongoing cycle.
It's a
Totally.
treadmill for sure that we
Yeah.
never get off.
Yep, and then we go into these cycles of when we have down season because we've gone so busy for so long, we
Yeah.
don't know how to rest, and so then we keep thinking like, "What can I do? What can I do?"
Yeah.
And
My favorite question,
that
how can my rest be more productive? I
yeah.
had a coaching client ask me that this week, and I was like, "Hun, it's not supposed to be productive. It's supposed to be restful." Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I'm glad you brought up rest because I'm on my soapbox this month about rest. One, because it's every month. So I have a membership for Wedding Pros called Better, and it's a self care membership. So every month we have a
Mm,
topic, and this month's topic is rest. And my
mhm.
members are coming out of their skin a little bit because they're like, "Well, what are we supposed to do though? How are we supposed to rest?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of the whole point of the month, you guys. We're figuring it out, but also like." I can't tell you how to rest, but the fact that you are so amped up about the right kind of rest means you just need to do
Mhm.
literally anything. I also want to acknowledge like we're recording this like smack middle of the month, December 15th. There's a lot of discourse the last couple of weeks from other educators whom I love that are like, do you know your word of the year yet? Do you have your phrase of the year? What are your goals for 2024? Do you have your income strategy plan? I'm like,
Yeah.
it's December, guys. Let us rest.
Yeah.
I do all of my goal setting in January. I
Mm.
don't want to run into 2024 sweaty, breathless, still
Yeah.
fueled with adrenaline, with clutching my goals in my hand like I did it. Because you
Yep.
know what? If I'm making goals right now for this version of me, I'm still all amped up from my season, right? I'm in maybe a little bit of a scarcity mindset because I'm looking at 2024's weddings like, do I have enough? Right?
Mhm.
If I make my goals right now, I'm making those goals for some past version of me.
Mhm.
I need the year to reset so that I can go,
Yeah.
okay, what do I want this year? Who do I want to be? And you're probably thinking like, well, that's 2 weeks. What's 2 weeks going to do? There's a whole holiday season in there.
Yeah.
There's a whole holiday season in there where you probably something new will come. Do
Mhm.
you ever get like your best ideas like in the shower or while you're like walking?
Oh, it's always when I'm doing something busy, which
Yep.
is funny. Like, and I will voice record them or do something so
Hmm.
that when I'm in those times of rest, I can re-listen to all
Yeah.
of my great
Yeah.
ideas.
Listen, one of my coaching clients yesterday was talking about how much she had to do. And then she goes, and I want to make these Christmas cookies, but I'm not going to have any time. So I'm not going to do it. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Make the Christmas cookies. And she was like, Renee, I can't. And I was like, no, no. Make the Christmas cookies because while you're quote unquote mindlessly making the Christmas cookies,
Mhm.
that's going to solve a lot of the problems you just told me you were having with the big idea. She's
Yeah.
working on this big project. And she's like, do you think? I was like, I know. I know. Every time I'm making
Mhm.
dinner, something pops up. When I'm in the shower, I go, oh, yeah, that. If I'm, walking the dog, I'm like, oh, right, that's a great idea. I can't have those great ideas if I'm head down working constantly
Yeah.
working on stuff for other people. You have to rest, whatever that looks like.
And for me, it's like being in the car and just turning off the radio and having
Yes.
silence. I feel
Yes.
like we have such a hard time where we've got to like either when we're in a moment where we're not driving, but we want to look at our phone and catch up on what's happening in today. But it's like
Oh
if you
yeah.
just turn all the noise off,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna you're gonna be re-inspired and recharged for sure.
100%. I used to do this thing. This was pre-pandemic. But I live in Los Angeles. I was constantly in my car. So
Mm,
I
yeah.
decided long ago that like my car time was productive. And so I listened to a podcast or listen to a book or make
Hmm.
phone calls, catch up with friends, call family. A silent car ride is so indulgent now. It's so
Yep.
lovely. I'm like, "Oh, look at me. I don't have to listen. I don't have to do anything right now. I can do nothing."
You're
Um,
going back to the 90s, right? As
right?
the kids would say these days.
Going back to the 90s. No, but I think anytime we can create bits of rest,
Hmm.
that's important because it is cumulative. Like it does, it, they say like you can't catch up on your sleep and that's true. That's science. But I really think that if you find moments of rest in your day, a 5-minute meditation, a silent car ride, you know, showering, a shower can be restful.
It's funny you say that. My friends and I talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
We're like, "I showered today."
Yeah.
Like, as it's like a big, like, gold
Yeah,
star for
you did
us.
it. I bring my coffee into the shower with me, and it's my favorite indulgent
I
stupid
love it.
thing. There's like a whole, we have like a whole shelf, so it's
Yeah.
not getting wet. I'm not like, it's safe. It's far away from me, but it's in there. And I just stand there in the heat with the coffee. I'm like, this is great. It's great. Like, and that's like what, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. Like anytime you can find these little
Hmm.
pieces of rest, take them. Now,
Yeah.
can you get an like an extended rest? Sure. If you plan it, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I know for me, it's one of those moments where I'm like, take a little time out of my day, which
Yeah.
for one is to go walk my dog
Yeah.
because I start feeling guilty. And I was like, if I didn't have my dog, I think I wouldn't take as much rest for myself. And
Yeah.
then taking a moment when I eat lunch to sit down and eat, not take
Yep.
it to my desk and
Same.
like eat it in front of my computer
Yeah.
or keep working. It's like just take 5 minutes if that's all it takes to eat, 10
Yeah.
minutes,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, just to unplug a little for
Yes.
sure.
I agree. Like, yeah, taking time away from your desk. Also those sort of in between times where you would be scrolling Instagram or TikTok.
Hmm.
I had to get really honest with myself about those times. On one hand, I love social media. I love seeing what other people are up to. I'm a nosy noserson. I want to
Uh-huh.
know. I want to know what parties y'all went to. Like I'm like, oh, everyone's at engaged. Like I'm in,
Uh-huh.
right? But I also have to acknowledge that like when I do that, sometimes I am sacrificing my own mental health in that moment of
Hmm.
should I just go meditate for 5 minutes? Do you meditate?
Um, not necessarily. I just take those. I mean, meditation to one is different than another.
For
I
sure.
tried yoga for a while,
Yeah.
just wasn't my thing.
Sure.
But I was like, just taking those moments to sit and be quiet.
Yeah.
I guess that would be considered
Yeah. That's
the
a form of
meditation
it
in
for
those
sure.
moments. Yeah.
I started and truly, honestly, Kara, if you had told me like 4 years ago that I'd be talking about and like sort of teaching about meditation on the internet, I'd be like, you're out of your
Hmm.
mind. Absolutely. I'm from New York. Are you kidding me? But when the pandemic started and we were sort of
Hmm.
forced home, I just needed more coping skills. Like I just needed more things in my toolbox, right? Like I already journal every day. I'm already drinking a ton of water. I'm already trying to move my body every day. What else? And
Hmm.
I'm a Peloton user. They have a Peloton app. They have 5 minute meditations in there. They also have
Mm.
10, 15, 20. I just said to myself, like, what's the worst that can happen if I just sit here for 5 minutes and breathe? And I'll tell you, the first couple times I did it, I was stubborn. I was sitting there like, this isn't going to work. Here's
Hmm.
the thing that I like sucks. It works. It works. These
Hmm.
things, the things that they tell you to do, and you're like, no, it won't work. It fucking works. It works.
Hmm.
And I'm mad that it works. I don't want it to work, but yet here I am meditating for 5 minutes every day because now I realize, right, in my
Hmm.
body when I'm about to get on a client call or I get an email that pisses me off, right?
Oh yeah.
Instead of just sitting with that horrible feeling, when this happens to me where I get mad and my body gets like flush with
Oh yeah.
something, I just go meditate now. I just put my earbuds
Mm.
in 5 minutes. I breathe. Is it always the most productive? No, but it's better than the alternative, which is sitting there with my nervous system in that state that is not restful
Or being reactive and not having your best self come out,
or being
because
reactive.
I'm very reactive to things. And I think it is something that I've instilled a little bit is to like pause in those
Mm-hmm.
moments, walk away and come back, because
100.
otherwise, yeah, I am. And it's not going to be pretty when I react because my initial thought is never the best.
That's right.
So
Which is the
yeah,
same thing
for
I
sure.
feel about goal setting. If I had asked, like, okay, look, think back to like 2020, right? At the end
Hmm.
of 2020, if you had asked any of us, how was this year for you? Without pause, right? We were all going, this year sucked. It was a dumpster fire. All of
Hmm.
us. And I get it because it was, especially, I mean, in LA, we didn't work at all. But once I was able to like sit and rest and really reflect, I was actually able to pull out a handful of really good things that happened that year, right? Like,
Yeah.
there was like, how nice was it to just be home? Like,
Yep.
I learned how to bake bread. I'm still not good at it, but like there's always things to be found that are good.
Hmm.
But if we're in such a reactive place right now and we don't get the rest and we just go into reaction, and I think the way we'll know this happens for us is for anyone listening, if you keep making the same goals every year and not meeting them, that's a reactive move.
Hmm.
because you're really not saying, who am I right now? What does me right now need? What does my business right now need?
Mm-hmm.
And then going from that place, if you're just going, well, last year I said I was going to write a book and then I didn't write a book, so I'm going to write a book next year. Okay, well,
Yeah.
why didn't you write the book though? What was happening? What needs to be
Mm-hmm.
different? Right? Like, we have to take the rest and sort of reset ourselves before we do the goal setting. Otherwise, like I said, you're making goals for a past version of you that probably doesn't exist anymore.
So what would you say then is like the best way to set goals? Because
Oh,
attainable
goals.
ones.
Yeah. So, you know how we always hear about those SMART goals, right? Like
Uh-huh.
specific, measurable, actionable,
Yeah.
relevant, time bound. I get it, right? But it also feels like super boring to me. Like
Mm-hmm.
when someone's like, what's your SMART goal? I'm like, can we just call those things something else? Like, I would much prefer it to be like satisfying, magical. You know what I mean? Like, something that could actually happen, like like thrilling. Like, I want a thrilling goal. I want something that
Ooh.
kind of like scares me a little. You know what I mean? So there's
I'm
a couple
adding that
ways.
into my 2024 for
Yeah,
sure. Thrilling
like
goal.
thrilling. Like, what would thrill you if it happened next year? Like, go for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you don't get thrilling, you'll probably end up somewhere, upwards of satisfied. Isn't that better
Mm-hmm.
than like smart? Let's be smart. Like, I don't want to be
Mm-hmm.
smart. I want to be completely bonkers about my goals. I want to
Yeah.
be pie in the sky. Like, yeah, I'm going to be Oprah next year. Who's to say I won't be? You know what I mean? Like, why not? But the other thing about, the goals is, I think there's a couple of things I see specifically with wedding pros
Mm.
is, we we tend to make, like, in my experience with the people I work with, like 47 goals for the year. Like, that's also bananas. What I like to do is sort of make 3 umbrella goals for the year, and those could
Mm.
look something like, I want to increase my health and wellness. I want to make enough money to put, 10 grand in savings. I'm just making these up. And then the third one is, we want to do 2 big trips next year. Like, those are the umbrella
Mm.
goals. So they're not really, they aren't SMART goals. They're not really, super specific. They're mostly just like, I would say that more of those, like, how do I want to feel? Right.
Mm.
I want to
Mm-hmm.
feel like we're secure enough in our finances. I want to feel like we have freedom to travel. I want to feel like I'm taking care of myself. But then I actually make the goals per quarter, because,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure this happens in the Midwest. We don't have, like, it's very easy to kind of get from January through March, end of March, and be like, oh, 3 months already,
Yup.
right?
Yeah.
And because, like, you guys, like, or winter, and in LA we
Mm-hmm.
don't have seasons at all. There are, I mean, legit, there are days every year where I go, what month is it? Because it doesn't feel like anything here.
Mm-hmm.
So I just say, like, what is our first quarter goals? And then at the end of quarter 1, I go, okay, what are we doing for quarter 2? And then what are we doing quarter 3, quarter 4? So yes, in January I'd love to look at the year and say, this is my whole year. But things change, things come
Oh
up, we
yeah.
live lives, right? If I'm making quarter 4 goals in January and then I'm down on myself for not achieving them, well, January me did not know what September me knows. Sorry, life
Yeah.
happens. If there's nothing we've learned in the last couple of years. So
Oh, for
I just
sure.
sort of take that pressure off myself. I say, like, how do I want to be next year? And then I make the goals per quarter. And that has served me well for many, many years. And it's actually something that I teach inside my membership. This is how we goal set, because we do that quarterly recap. That's the important part. I don't think we can set our goals in this vacuum, this blanket statement, and then never look at them again until December and be like, well, I guess I failed. Well, you didn't look at them again, friend. Like, sometimes we can manifest things. We can write it down and then be like, oh
Yeah.
my God, that happened. Right? That happens to everyone every year. Like, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
I did that thing without even thinking. Funny how our brain works for us when we're
Yeah.
not trying, right? But, like, if you don't review and
Mm-hmm.
make a new, things happen. Yeah. How do you normally do your goals?
So it used to be where I would do it at the end of the year,
Yeah.
kind of like as I'm preparing things for taxes, really. So
Yeah.
January mostly. And then kind of say, like, this is what I want to see happen in the year. But lately, so I have a couple of photographer friends, and we call ourselves a collective, and we get
Nice.
together once a month. And I said, let's just start writing goals once a month,
Yes.
and ones
So,
that you think are attainable. And
mhm.
for some of us, it's a mental health thing. For some of us,
100.
it's a business thing. And so I said, like, they go hand in hand,
Yeah.
especially when you're the primary business owner and the only one in your business.
Yep.
And so I said, we are the ones that are going to keep each other accountable for this. So, like, what do you think you want to see in this next month, and what do you want to see for the year? And then each month we sit down and we go over it again
Yeah.
and kind of check in mid-month, like, hey, have you even addressed
Yeah.
this goal you had yet?
Yeah.
And kind of go from there. So yeah.
I love that. One of the things I also advocate for all the time is like when you make these goals, right? These monthly goals or quarterly goals, you have to identify like what is the very smallest first step I can take to get me in some
Mhm.
kind of momentum. Because oftentimes when we're setting goals, we're like, well, I need to redo my website. Let me go pick the photos.
It's like the very last thing you need.
Right. Or I want to launch a course. Let me pick out the slides. And I'm like, okay. Or maybe you should start with an outline. Like, what's the
Yeah.
smallest thing you should do to get, because our brains want to work on the things that make us happy and give us like
Mhm.
the excitement, right? Of like,
Yep.
oh, you're doing it. But that isn't always the way to stay in momentum, right? You have
Yeah.
to sort of do the thing that's going to propel you to the next thing, and also don't take so much time figuring out that thing. Just go do something. um Clarity comes from action, not thought.
Mm.
We have to get our bodies into work. We learn so much more that way. Like our whole being learns more that way. The other thing that I really like to do, and this is like a little manifestation hack that I've been doing for a couple of years now, and I've only just started teaching it because I was like, is this work for other people but me? um, I make a vision board every year, but
Mm.
I make it I make it in Canva size to be my cell phone wallpaper,
Mm.
because I look at that phone
Yeah.
like 1,000 times a day. And when I tell you here, I don't know if you can see, you probably can't because I have all these stupid notifications, but you can kind of see it's like a bunch of
Oh, nice.
photos, right?
Yeah.
Um, so every January I make this vision board on my phone. Uh, and this year it worked out, but last year it was even better. So um, so in 2022, right? Yeah, it's 2023. See, I never know what we're doing. In 2022, I made a vision board, and on it was a photo of like people dancing in like a dark European street, like a nighttime scene, right? There was a beach
Mm.
moment. There was Robin Otterzone, my favorite Peloton instructor, like looking at me. There was a photo of like a camera, like a film or TV camera, like pointed at me, and a microphone and something else. Oh, a passport with stamps, right?
Mm.
And when I made this in January, I thought like, these are things I want in my life. Like these are things I would like to see. So I try to pick the images that are like me looking at the thing I want, right? So it's like first person
Mhm.
images sort of. Anyway, cut to the end of the year. My father decided to move to Portugal. So we
Oh, wow.
spent Christmas in Portugal, and that little nighttime street scene actually happened. It was like my family like
Mm.
laughing down a street. The passport was stamped, right? We also went
Mhm.
to a beach in Portugal, so like that whole trifecta done. Um, Something that I could not know in January of that year was that my husband, who does work in TV, we'll give you that one, but my husband worked on a reality show. He works in hidden cameras specifically, and so
Mm.
he worked on a show called The Prank Panel, which played a prank on a wedding pro in my market, and so they hired me to be in the episode, to play the wedding planner in the episode,
Oh
and I
my
filmed
gosh.
that in 2022. I mean, like it wasn't on the bingo
Wow.
card in January, right? We didn't even
Yeah.
know the show existed. And
Yeah.
then, oh, and then I did like a million Peloton rides, right? I mean, that was more like my own will. But when I looked at and the microphone, I spoke 2022, I ended up clocking like something like 112 days on the road, and I spoke like 30
Mm.
something times. Like it was an insane amount of
Wow.
speaking that year. But again, I didn't know that in January. Now, Grant, did I manifest all of this? Who's to say, right? But almost everything on that vision board happened.
Mm.
And I think it's just because I looked at it every day. Now, the
Yeah.
one for this year had, again, a camera and a giant audience, like a big audience.
Mm.
And then this year, I was the keynote at Wedding MBA in front of 6,000 people. And when I got on
Wow.
stage, the room was so long that I couldn't see the back of it. And the other day
Wow.
I was looking at this little vision board and I was like, did it again. So just put the stuff you want to see in your life in front of your face all the time and just see what happens.
Yeah. No, that's good. What would you say, like, when you create those goals, what what is your would that be your best practice for like tracking, or like is there something else you would do for like tracking what those are?
Yeah. So I really love, and of course I don't have one here because it's on my bedside table. I use the Full Focus Planner.
Mm,
It's by Michael Hyatt. It's specifically, well, I don't think it was specifically designed for people with ADHD, but it has been revealed that like it really works for people with
mm,
ADHD, because it allows you to set like 3 goals a day, and then
mm.
there's like a list of tasks, right, that can go throughout the day.
Yeah.
And then there's a weekly review where you say like, what are the 3 things I need to get done this week? And then there's a review. Did I get those 3 things from last week done?
Mm,
And it's super simple. You don't need the Full Focus Planner to do it. But I feel like that diligence of like of the tracking of the asking yourself, am I doing the things I said I wanted to do? And if I'm not, why? Am I procrastinating? Am I fearful? Am I afraid of success? Am I afraid of failure? Am I
mm.
literally not getting enough time for myself? Is it my time management? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
Um, because that piece, like the getting really honest with yourself, is really the piece that's going to serve you the best. And again, like the being honest, right? Because I know so many
Yeah.
people. I'm last year I got certified as a life coach. It was something like a bit of a long project that started during the pandemic. Um, and one of the things that I see a lot in my coaching clients is when I say like, well, what's getting in your way? Like, well, I don't have time. I'm like, okay, it's either, I think like the two biggest crutches we have for ourselves are we say we have no time.
Hmm.
And if it's a business thing, we're like, well, my workflow needs to be redone. It's my workflow. And I'm like, is it? Is it really though?
Yeah.
What about the time? What about like the workflow? And listen, I'm not a 5 a.m. entrepreneur. I like to sleep. I got up today at 7:30. You're not going to catch me up at 5 a.m. writing the great American novel. I'm not going to do it. Right? Are you an early bird?
No.
Yeah. I'd rather stay up till 1 working.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't do that anymore for my own health, but I
Yeah.
would rather than get up at 5, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So I'm not advocating that you like become sleep deprived to do this, to do whatever you want to do, but there are seasons, like you said,
Yeah.
where sometimes you have to say, look, if I'm going to write this book, I got to do something else. When I was getting
Hmm.
certified as a life coach, you know, it was a rigorous amount of hours and classes. And one of the only classes that was available to me was at 6 a.m. every Thursday for
Oh,
6 months. And I was like, am I going to be the person? And then I was like, you know what? I want this enough that I will for this finite amount of time. Yes. I mean, was I half dead on the calls? Yes. But my ass was in the seat. I showed up. So yeah, I think,
I think it's important too because you make time for the things you find important,
right.
and so I think that's always huge too. Because like if it has something to do with, um, I mean, we all have work and jobs, but if there's something where like we really need to go to that, you're gonna find ways to make time for that. So in your
Right.
daily schedule,
Right.
you're gonna make time
Yeah.
if this is the one important thing for your day. So I totally agree with that.
What's one of your big goals for next year? Do you have anything identified yet?
My biggest goal, I honestly, I haven't gotten that far yet.
Good.
I
I'm glad because it's
my
only December.
yeah, my biggest goal that I try to do is monetary,
Mm.
and it's always like beating the goal I had the year before, which hopefully
Oh,
with inflation
yeah.
really takes
Yeah.
takes it there. But I usually set, and I've already attained it, and we haven't even gotten to the um end of this year for the one I set last year. So I'm
Nice.
trying to think of, okay, what is something I should set for the following year?
Yeah.
And it's all business wise, not
Yeah.
personal, but personal wise. Um, was setting more time to rest and saying no to things
Yeah.
so that I can say yes to more like things in my personal life,
And how did that
because
feel for you?
really good.
Good.
And I still have those moments where I feel guilty for it because I have this drive where I'm like, I constantly feel the need to like keep getting better and better.
Yeah.
And I allow myself those moments. And when I'm done, I feel good that I did it. But I've never felt guilty for not doing something about work,
Yeah.
um, because of something in my personal life had more attention. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of that is too, like, I could be on my computer all hours of the night, but these specific days I'm going to take time to just not be on my computer, even if we're not doing anything
Yep.
at home, is to just shut off work, because especially when you work at home, you can work
Yeah. Yeah.
constantly.
I agree with you. I mean, one of the things I'm sort of ashamed to admit is that pre-pandemic, I would work all day at this desk, or I used to have a co-working spot. So I would leave the house, work, meetings, 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 busy, busy, important, important, so fancy, important.
Mhm.
Then I would come home and I'd make dinner, because for me, that's like a meditative, like I love cooking most of the time. It's very like good for me to just get out of my head and make something. And then I would get back on my laptop sitting in front of the TV with my husband.
Mhm.
And he would complain to me about, like, you're not really here when you do that. And I'm like, well, you're watching
Yeah.
TV anyway. Who cares?
Mhm.
Now, once the pandemic hit and there was very little work, I really got myself out of that habit. So much so now that picking up my laptop at night now has now become a, ooh, something must be going on with her. And like, I'm proud
Mhm.
of me now for getting myself out of that literal habit. It was a muscle memory. I was like, oh, get my
Yeah,
laptop.
exactly.
I'm listen. We're still good. I'm running two full businesses and a podcast. I don't need to be on the computer at night if I don't want to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I agree with you about the saying no. One of the commitments I made to myself at the beginning of 2023 was that, I mean, I used to be like a champion. Give me a gold star networker. Like if an envelope
Mhm.
was opening in this city, I was there. I was there. I was
Yeah.
excited. I was supportive. I was taking photos. I was everywhere. But after you build a successful business, I had to remind myself that, like, I don't need to be so breathless anymore about this.
Yeah.
People know me. They've worked with me. They respect me. If they don't, there's nothing I can do about that. Going to some party is not going to change it.
Yeah.
And I don't need to do that to that level anymore. I said
Mhm.
no to so many things this year. And yeah, there was a little bit of FOMO. Like I said, I'm on the
Oh,
socials, like,
yeah.
where's everybody?
Yep.
But ultimately, I'm like, even if I'm home in sweatpants on the couch scrolling TikTok, ultimately, that's probably serving me better because I can go to bed early and get up in the morning and work out. You know what I mean? Than it is to
Mhm.
go to the party and see the people that I already know. Right. So, like, I had to sort of
Yeah.
weigh out, like, what's
It's
good for the season.
one thing that I changed for this year is I would work all through the year and find work whenever I could. And the one thing that I allowed myself, because I got comfortable in the fact that I felt like I had enough business for 2024.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't have to work as hard. There are fears for 2025 where I'm saying I haven't booked anything for 2025.
Yeah.
But then I have to think back to last year where I thought, okay, well, I booked everything for 2024 and 2023 in January of 23.
Yeah.
So there's comfort there to like
Yeah.
think back, but I made a goal to myself. I am going to finish work December this date, and I am not going to get my camera out for the rest of the month. And it has been really hard, but for me to say no, it's allowing me to have that rest and be more
Yes.
intentional with my family time. And
100%.
it's not that I'm not working, because I'm just not getting
Yeah.
hired to work.
Yes.
But there's a lot of things where people are asking for volunteer work and things like that. And in order to make that happen for me, I had to decide December, I'm going to send all my equipment in to be serviced. Because
Oh,
if I have my
smart.
equipment,
Yeah.
it's going to be super easy for me to say yes
Yep.
and let those go. So
Yep.
I had to understand, like, what is it going to take for me to say no to these things? And that was it.
So
Where,
smart. You're like, sorry, I don't
yeah,
have my equipment. It's being serviced.
yeah.
So sorry. Yeah.
Where people are like, well, can you at least do it with your phone? And I'd be like, I'd rather
No.
not. I'd rather enjoy these moments than be
Oh
on my
my
phone.
gosh.
So, yep.
Yeah,
When
no.
you're
I
always the photographer,
I
you're
was gonna
always
say,
asked,
that's right, right?
So,
Thankfully no one's asking me to plan their holiday parties. Although I put my foot in the ground a couple of, that's not the saying. You know what I mean? I put my foot
yep.
down. That's what I put my foot down a couple of years ago and said, like, I'm not working in December anymore. Because the December weddings that I had were always really tough, right? It was tough to get vendors.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
tough. It was just tough all around. And I was like, I mean, I had some lovely December weddings over the years, but like not enough for me to seek it out. So now I'm just
Yeah.
like, we don't work in December. And I know I'm very privileged to say that. I totally
Yeah.
get it. But that's one of the reasons I worked so hard and hustled so hard for so many years, to be able to be like, guess what? Last year we went to Portugal for half the month because my dad lives there. So that's how we were able to do
Yeah.
that. But like December 15th, we were on a plane. We didn't come back till the 1st. And everyone's like, that must be nice. I'm like, well, yeah, but I work, we work so hard. And I think that's the
Yeah.
thing too. I just want to say, because I know, photographers listen to this, but other wedding pros too. It's like, let's just acknowledge how hard we work. We
Mm-hmm.
work so hard. And like, yeah, I know we're not like, performing surgeries, but this work is physically exhausting. It's
Oh, yeah.
mentally exhausting. It's emotionally taxing. We are invested on every single level all
Yep.
year long. Take a Thursday and go to the movies.
Yeah.
Go to Target by yourself and get a Starbucks. Take 2 weeks and go to Portugal if you can. Like, do these things because you're not getting this time back. Like, this is our life.
Yeah. And I think if you are setting it up at the beginning of the year when you're saying goals, like I want to have the goal of taking off December. So what is
Yep.
that going to take for me in my business? Like, am
Yep.
I going to have to set finances aside so that I
Yeah,
can financially carry myself through December? Then
absolutely.
that might be what needs to happen. But you have to have that space to rest
Yeah.
in the rest of the year because you work so hard.
One of the
But
goals I had made for myself financially a couple of years ago, many years ago actually now, but it's salient to what you were just saying, is that, as a wedding planner, the way we're taught to take payments is 50% down and 50% a month before
yeah,
the wedding, which is bananas and wasn't working for me, right?
yeah,
I need a steady cash flow. So about, I don't know, gosh, 8 years ago now, I was like, how can I not be broke in December every year, right? Like
yeah,
no money coming in December. All of my clients are on monthly payments. Even the fanciest of fancy clients, even the ones who are paying me an exorbitant amount of money, they are on monthly payments. So I get paid
nice.
every month. And when I book someone, I have my handy dandy, very manual, very old school Google Sheet cash flow system where I book someone
I
and go,
love it.
okay, am I getting paid every single month? And I have a monthly, amount that I need to hit every month. And I make sure that I get there because
Yeah,
I schedule these payments. And I know that there are other people in my market, especially luxury planners, who are like, "Oh, my clients would never." I'm like, they don't even know. They're not even their estate person is paying you. They're not paying
yeah.
you. What does
Well,
it
and
matter?
in the moment too is like they're either putting that in a savings. It's not like they're pulling that final chunk of money at the end and
No.
saying, "Okay, this is my payment from my last paycheck." They're
Right.
putting that aside anyway.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like tell them in the beginning like this is how we're going to do it. I love that.
Yeah.
That's
I advocate
great.
everyone, every wedding pro, even DJs who are like, I could never. I'm like, no, take a monthly payment, please. Take a monthly payment. Because the other thing that happens psychologically is if they're paying you on a regular basis, and
Mhm.
you're working with them on a regular basis like planners do, then that makes sense to them. You're getting paid for the work you
Yeah.
do. It
And they're going to
makes
stay in
sense.
touch and not forget about you
Oh yeah,
cuz they're making payments to
they're
you
making
each month.
payments. Yeah, I just
Yep.
think we have to do a little bit more, especially when we're making these financial goals, right? To be able to check in with ourselves on the monthly and say like, are we
Mm.
still there? And also forecast, will we get there? But then also like being able to pivot, be nimble. What can you do? Can you come up with a new offering? Can you do a promo? What can you do if you're not getting there?
Mm.
Right. I
Yeah.
think some people in the wedding industry, especially, you get so locked into like, well, this is what I do. Like, okay, but could you do a mini headshot day? You know, if you need a
Mhm.
cash influx, like there are things we can always pull out if we're getting creative.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I am like in my slowest of seasons. If I find that I'm not booking weddings a lot for the following season, because usually I here in the Midwest, and I don't know if it's the same for you since your seasons are all
We
the
got
same,
we got all the
but we get
seasons.
an influx of engagements and things happening in like the beginning of January. So
Yeah,
like
same.
that's when a lot of our bookings are happening.
Yeah.
Um, are you feeling the same? Like, does that happen with you or is
Yeah.
it different?
No, it happens here. I always sort of say it's like, oh God, it's the new year. We want to get married this year. Oh God, we should do something about it. Like it's that
Yeah.
energy. It's like, oh shit,
Yeah.
we kind of forgot.
Yep.
Or we're getting people inquiring for like 2026. And I'm like, I don't even know where I'm going to be. No thanks. Like,
Yeah.
no, thank you. So yeah, we see that sort of breathless, frantic January reach out too. But it's happening. I mean, even this week, I've gotten so many inquiries that I'm like, oh, you
Yeah.
guys are You guys are feeling the end of the year now. I see how it
Yep.
goes.
Well,
Yeah.
it's crazy because, like, if I'm feeling like that's not happening or
Mm,
not enough is coming through, that's when I take it's usually February and March where I'm usually the slowest. And
hmm
usually I take that time to really improve my business and set myself up for success for the next year.
Totally.
But if I'm finding like I need a cash flow influx here,
hmm
that's when I start booking things and offering it to my existing clients and say, hey, I'm offering this if you're interested.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, that's when you need work.
You know what I love to
But
do to suggest for photography coaching clients too? It's like if you do have that lull, right? That like February, like,
mhm,
oh God. Something that worked really well from one of my coaching clients, not in LA, they live in elsewhere in the US, because they were a little bit newer in their market and they wanted to meet more people. They just emailed all the sales teams and all the in-house teams of all the venues they worked at and said, do you guys need
mm,
new headshots for your teams?
yep,
And it was a pretty very reasonable price. And I mean, literally, she got like 6 different venues, the owners, to pay her, and she made a killing that month just doing headshots, refreshed headshots for the team because it felt like
yeah.
a nice thing to
Well,
do.
and that's where I've went too because I'm like, I want to work with more wedding coordinators.
Yeah,
I don't want these DIY weddings as much because I end up becoming the wedding planner then.
I do not envy
Um
that position. I hate when people put you guys in that
which
position. Yes.
it is one of those things I'm a control freak. So when it comes to like the timeline and stuff, I love it.
Yeah.
But I'm not the one that's going to handle everything that's coming up. I'm not setting up. But
Yeah.
so I've set it up where I've reached out to some and said, "Does your team need new headshots?
Yeah.
I'd love to offer you new headshots."
Yeah.
And in return, like, hey, if you have business and they're looking for a photographer, just feel free to send them my name
Yeah.
or whatnot. So that's kind of like my goal to move into. But yeah, that's so good because yeah, that's the time where they're probably all refreshing anyway,
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, we need new headshots, we need new content, all the
Absolutely.
things."
And then it's also like honestly every time that's posted, they're like, "Oh, these headshots were taken by Kara." You know what I mean? Like your
Yeah,
name just gets out there more and I know we don't really want people to work for exposure, but at a certain point exposure for the with the right people at the right time can just keep
yeah,
you that top of mind or oh, we saw your name again. We saw your name again. We saw your
yeah,
name again. And that's, what we're looking for always.
yep.
Um sorry, I feel like I got you way off of goals.
You're totally fine.
Woo! The ADHD brain is a wonder. It's a
I love
wonder.
it. But yeah, if you had one more thing to add to listeners, just kind of talking about that reset and the goals for 2024, what would be something else you would want to add in for
Okay,
the
this
rest of
is
the
a
time that we
really
have?
woo suggestion, but
Okay.
I love it. Every year I just take a regular old piece of scrap paper and I write down all of the things that I'm leaving behind in the year
Oh,
prior, right? So, and it can be like I haven't done mine for the year yet because it's still December, but like last year it was like I'm leaving behind feeling overwhelmed, right? I'm leaving
yeah.
behind not making time for my personal care. I'm leaving behind sleeping in, right? These just habits, these little things that I was like,
Yeah.
I know I could be better. And then I rip them into little pieces. And I personally like the ritual of burning the pieces of
No, I love
paper.
it.
So I
Yeah.
take a little candle down to the beach and we dig a little hole and I sit there and I write them out. I make my husband do it. Last year, my nephew did
Aw.
it too because he was visiting and he was like, what are we doing? I was like, don't worry about it. And I like took him down there
A
and he had
burning ceremony.
well, and we're doing a little ritual. He was like, "What is happening?" But I'll tell you this: he's not going to listen to the show, so I can say it. He had just gotten his little heart broken for the first time,
Oh,
and this girl broke up with him in a spectacularly Gen Z fashion, just like, oh, right. And I said, "This is what we do," and I left him to it. The next day, he said to my husband, "Well, I just like did that releasing thing that Aunt Renee did, and I just like, I put her name in there." And I was like, "Oh, I got him."
aw.
And then my husband's like, "Did it feel better?" He's like, "Yeah, it felt great." And I was like, "See, burning things. There's something cathartic about saying like,
Yeah.
I release this thing into the past. I don't want it anymore."
Yeah.
And you watch it. I mean, on a little candle. You're not making a huge bonfire, although you
Yeah.
can if you want to. Just let it burn. And there is something very clearing about just saying like, I don't need this anymore.
For sure.
And it can be those things, or it can be an ex-girlfriend who wronged you, or it can be like the wrong clients, right? You're leaving
Yeah.
behind, or you're leaving behind feeling badly about how a conversation went last year. Get rid of it. You don't need it. That's what I mean about the
Yeah.
reset, right? Like resetting yourself by resting, but also do something, right? I have a friend
Mm.
who doesn't like to burn things, which I don't understand, but sure. She likes to like write her things on like little rocks and throw them into the ocean. And I'm like,
Mm.
that doesn't seem as satisfying to me, but you know what I mean? There are other things you
Yeah.
can do to release. And I just think having these little rituals for ourselves, taking the time to do it, I don't know, it takes like 10 minutes. It's not a lot of
Yeah.
time. It just means something though. You can say, oh, remember that day that we did that thing, you know?
Of course. Yeah, that's so good. I might have to try that.
Burn
Cuz
things. Burning things is
yep.
great.
Well, even just like throwing that out there, the things that you've let
Yeah,
go.
just pitching it
I
into the
love that.
ocean. Like it's
Yeah.
gone. Yeah. And the
We
other
don't have
thing
an ocean, but we do have a lake, a
that's true.
very
Yeah.
big lake here in Michigan.
The other thing
So,
too is like the releasing is great, and I also think like uncluttering things is good too, right? Like you
yeah. Oh, yeah.
like anytime you can get rid of clutter, your desk, listen, even your camera
Yeah.
roll in your phone. I did that a
Oh,
couple of days ago. I was like, what is even in
same.
here? Just
Yep.
clean it out, get it out, refresh it,
Yep.
reset it.
It always feels so good to be able to do that. I
Yeah.
totally agree. And I feel like the satisfaction even when I just like load my dishwasher and like
Yes.
and
Yes.
I want everyone to know in the house that I loaded and unloaded the dishwasher. I'm like, "Are
Look
you
at all this
proud of
that I
me?"
did. Look at everything. I feel that way when I fold the clothes and put them away. I'm like, look at
Oh,
this.
yeah,
Look,
for sure.
I'm
They're
amazing.
not laying on the floor in a basket still. So true. Well, I just want to bring up before we end the self-care membership you talked about. So do you want to
Yeah.
mention that one more time?
Yeah, yeah. So last year, the end of last year, or sorry, end of 2022, when I was still in my life coaching certification, I started realizing that I had a lot of coaching clients, and I started realizing that a lot of the things they were coming to me with could be helped if they just had better habits, like daily habits.
Mm.
And they all boil down to self care. And when I say self care, I do not mean like a bubble bath or a massage or a facial. And those things are great. Like do them 100%. But I'm talking about like the unsexy everyday things you do for yourself that should be as automatic as brushing your teeth, but for most of us they're not.
Mhm.
Things like getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, getting enough movement, getting fresh air, taking your vitamins, journaling, meditation. These are things that
Yeah.
they're not like fake. These things really do help you. And
Yep.
so I decided that I was going to do this membership that is literally self-care for, I say for wedding pros and creatives because those are my people, but we have people in the membership that are all like one's a copy editor, one's a floral preserver, like wedding industry and also adjacent, right? But the point is every month we have a focused topic. So this year we had, obviously so many topics. We had better confidence, better relationships, better nutrition, better
Mm.
money, where we talked about like money mindset. Next year, we're doing better investments because everyone has a lot of questions about that. Better rest, better leadership, better time management is a big one. We're going to do that every single year. So this month in December, we're in better rest. In January, we'll be doing better goal setting, where I will teach a
Nice.
lot of what we talked about here in a weekly structure. Um,
Nice.
February is going to be better visibility, like putting our fancy little mugs on the internet and not just doing it, but like what's
Yeah.
behind all of it, right? Like why aren't we doing
Yeah.
it? Like what's the mindset there? Better sleep. We're doing better. Oh God, I can't remember all the topics for next year. But anyway, it's on the website. You can go check it out. The thing that I
That's
like about the
awesome.
membership is first of all, it's $29 a month. It's like way underpriced because I want people to do it. Right. I want people
Yeah.
not to be like, oh, I can't afford it, or oh, but I'm in this other membership. Great, keep your other memberships. This is additional. This is for you,
Mm.
right?
That's
The
good.
and the way we tackle it is we have a master class every month, just an hour. Every month I release one guided meditation. So if you're not doing any other meditation, you can just listen to my voice. It's like 5-6 minutes. Then we do some sort of like sort of a coaching session, or like this month we're doing a restorative yoga session, right? The month for
Mm.
better nutrition we did a cooking class. Like we're always kind of give something a little bit more exciting. And then every month we read a book, and we have book club, which is a very casual book club, which I
Aw.
always say like Even if you've listened to half of it on Audible, still come. Let's have a discussion, right? And then we also have some guest coaches come in who are certified life coaches who are also kind of speaking to their specific areas of expertise. But it's really just meant to be like bite-sized, right? Like come as
Yeah.
you can. And then everything is on a private member podcast, because I know so many of our listeners like yours love podcasts, and I want people to be able to listen to it while they're doing dishes or walking the dog.
Yeah.
Self-care should not be something that we do when we have time. It's something we
Yeah.
have to make time for. And I promise you, and someone said this to me, they were like, well, how will I make more money? How will you not make more money taking better care of yourself? Your standards will be higher. Your
Mhm.
BS meter will be a lot, more in tune. I think the folks that I see out there struggling the most with their business are also usually struggling the most on other levels, right?
Mhm.
Like our business and our lives aren't that separate when we're entrepreneurs in this space. It's just, I've never seen it in 13 years. If your life is a mess, your business is probably a mess. And if you can get a handle on just a little bit of your life, 5 minutes of journaling a day, 5 minutes of meditation a month, right?
Mhm.
Listen to this conversation for an hour, read a book when you can. All these things over time are going to change you in ways that you can't see in the moment. But when you look
Yeah.
back on the year, you're like, oh my God, I did all that. I was talking to one of our members yesterday. She's trying to launch this online course, not about wedding stuff, but this passion project that she has. And I was saying, you seem very different to me now. Like you seem so confident now. And she's like, yeah, well, we did a month in Better called like Better Confidence, and it was all about playing bigger in the world. And she's like, between
Mm.
you teaching us about playing bigger and this other educator that I follow teaching about, coming into your own. And she's like, I just really felt like I had a lot of like rah rah cheerleaders in my head going, you can do it. And I was like,
Mm.
well, that's what it's about. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it's about. You have to be careful with who you let speak into your business, I think,
Yeah.
and your life. And I think that with Better, all I'm trying to do is just put a lot of positivity and a lot of encouragement in a way that is actionable out into the world.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, and for $29.99, you said
It's just $29.
that's a lot of
It's
content just
yeah.
for that monthly fee. So
Thank you. We're trying to
that's great.
over deliver, and also I just think
Yeah.
like we pay for so much in this industry. Like it's expensive.
Yeah.
Like let's do something for ourselves that feels reasonable.
Yeah. No, that's good. Well, before we wrap up, where can everyone find you, Renee, on the web?
So, my wedding planning stuff is at Moxie Bright Events, but all the stuff that pertains to other business owners is at Renee Dallow. So reneedallow.com, Renee Dallow on Instagram. The Better membership is at reneedallow.com/better, BETTER. My podcast is Talk with Renee Dallow. New episodes every Thursday. Just Google Renee Dallow. You'll find all the stuff. I'm
That's
the
so
only
good.
one, apparently. So
That's awesome. You can also find the Cameras and Coffee podcast at karahainesphotography.com/podcast or at Cameras and Coffee Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. Renee, thank you so much for coming on today. This is
thanks for having
so
me.
great. So much great stuff to talk about that even I am going to implement now
Yay.
after having talked to you. So thanks again. And until next time, my friends, cheers.